If you've been wanting to learn to knit and you weren't quite sure where to start, then this is going to be the video for you. I'm going to walk you through 4 stitches to knit your very first swatch. Nothing fancy, just made a cup of tea. My kids and husband are away to watch the local rugby game. And I thought I'd make the most of the time by myself to hang out here with you and show you some super simple tips. We're going to talk about some yarn. I've just got a wee end of a ball here. This is some Ashford 8-ply merino in old gold. We're also going to talk about interchangeable needles. And if you stick around to the very end, I've got a little treat just to say thanks for sticking around. So I have got a swatch, which I'll link in the comments below that you can get for free. And the beauty of doing a swatch is you really get to learn how big your stitches are compared to the designer. Sometimes they'll be smaller, sometimes they'll be bigger, but it's really important to know what your gauge is, and to know that is best to do a swatch. Sometimes you can get away with not doing a swatch, like on a blanket. It's not really major. It doesn't have to fit. So if you think of things that need to fit, and you're going to put a lot of time and effort in your money, like you'll invest a lot in some yarn. Let's say it's a jersey, you might be looking at, I don't know, 10 to 12 50-gram 8-ply balls, which could be anywhere from $10 to $20 each. It's really important to know that it's going to fit in the end when you're finished. And it just really helps build your confidence. We notice the more I help people build their confidence, the more they're just like, oh, this is great. So quite happy to box on with the next project. So yeah, I'm just going to have a sip of my cup of coffee. Feel free to go make yourself one or grab a glass of wine or do something like that. We'll just go slow and steady. But if you're new here, I'm Kieran from Needle and Hook, and I'm located right at the bottom of the South Island in New Zealand. And today we're going to dive into the absolute basics of knitting. And once you have done this swatch, you're going to have all the skills in your pocket to make this Ida headband. So this is very simple, and it uses the same stitches that your swatch is going to make. So if you've never picked up your needles before, please don't worry. I'm going to talk to you about interchangeables. These are my favorite. So they're basically a circular needle, and the interchangeable part is that the tips come off the ends of the cord. I'm going to be using a 60 centimeter cord today, and my 4mm tips. So the bit that screws onto the end is called your tip. Most brands, they come in a couple of different lengths. So these are both the same diameter. They're both 4mm needles, and they'll come in a pair of 2. So there's my 2 long ones, and there's my 2 short ones. And generally, most brands will sell a set of 5-inch and a set of 3.5. So I'm going to be using my 5-inch needles just because you've got a little bit more to hold on to. And I find you get a little less fatigue in your hands when you're using the longer ones. The smaller ones are really handy to own a couple. I have a full set of likey long needles in my case. There's a few on different projects, and then they come with a wee space in here for your cords and different things. I really love my likey long case, so my 5-inch tips. And then in my little tin, I've got just a little range of shorties. So they're quite good for bands, like neckband, cuffs, and that is the reason why I've got them in the short length, because you need to go around quite a small circumference. So these big things sort of stick in the road, which can be a bit annoying. So I'm going to stick with my 5-inch tips, and I'm going to put them on my 60 centimeter cord. So the length of the cord is once you've got both your tips on. I'll just sit that one down and screw this one on. And the term interchangeable is so that you can, if the pattern calls for it, let's say you're working a jersey and the body of your jersey is worked in 4mm, and then you get down to your band and it's worked in 325 or something like that to keep the band tighter. You can just, instead of taking your stitches off onto another needle, you can just change your tips. So they come with this little metal thing. It's called a key, and you just pop it into that hole at the very end of the cord, and this just helps give you a bit of leverage. And then we'll put the other side on, and you want it nice and tight. You use that key to get it nice and tight, because if you don't, as you start to knit, this will sort of unravel. You'll know it's untightening. Is that even a word? You'll know it's doing that because you'll have a stitch that falls down there. So that is the second one, all nice and tight. So for my swatch and for the Ida headband, this is all you need. A 60cm cable works well, and some 4mm tips. Doesn't matter whether you're doing, you use long ones or short ones. Yeah, you could also use long tips if that's your jam. It's totally up to you. You're going to be working flat. So by flat we mean working backwards and forwards. You're not working in a round. The Ida headband has got a seam. So we started here and knitted a nice big long thing. But for the purpose of today's video, we're going to do a gauge swatch. And we're not going to go with any pattern. We're just going to knit and see what our gauge is. So the combination of yarn and needles will give you your gauge. It'll be, you can knit with 2 different 8-plies and the same needles and get different gauge. Sometimes you can knit with the same yarn, same needles, and still end up with different gauge. So as you learn to knit, it's really good to knit some things that don't really matter too much. And you just build your confidence from project to project. So I've got a couple of videos on how to do a backward loop cast on, but I thought for this video I might show you a long tail. It just gives a real nice flexible edge that's quite strong. It gives you something a little bit gruntier than a backwards loop cast on. So you can check out my other videos if you'd like to see my backward loop, but let's go for a long tail cast on. So you want about 3 or 4 times the width of our swatch. I'm going to do let's say about this much. I'm going to do a little bit wider than this. So I'm going to need about 4 times that much yarn. So we could just probably lie it out and see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just going to have a little bit more for extra. And we want to do a slip knot at about that point. So you leave this is your long tail that's going to lurk out there. So you just want to make a knot. So just make a loop before you make your knot and pull that through. So you're just making the first knot on your shoelaces, but you're not pulling it all the way through, and that will slip up. So I'll show you that again. I'm just going to make a loop around my fingers, and then I'm going to come through the loop and grab the yarn that's going back to the ball, and I'm going to hold both the bits of yarn and pull the loop. Alrighty. Now we just want to put this slip knot on one of your needles. Now, I have got a bit of a cold. So if I sneeze, apologies, I've got one brewing, I can feel it. Woo! They generally come in 3s, so we'll see if that happens. Lucky we are virtual, not side by side. Okay, so now for our long tail cast on, we're going to leave that long tail out the back, and we're going to keep the yarn that's going to the ball to the front. And then what I want you to do is get the long tail between middle and ring finger on your left hand, and then just turn your hand and clasp down on both bits of yarn. Then bring your thumb to create some tension on that ball going back to the yarn, and you're going to twist around and make a wee loop. Now, to get this into words is very tricky. So I will post this video up on my channel so you can see it afterwards. And you can super slow-mo it, things like that. So now we're going to put our needle through this loop, and we're going to pluck a new stitch from the long tail. And then we're just going to pull it nice and snug. The goal here is to have not too loose that they fall off the stitches. If we tip that upside down, they're not falling. And not too tight that they can't scooch across. So we're going to pluck. So that's 3 stitches. The first one was our slip knot. The second one was our first cast on that we made, long tail cast on, and we've just done our third. So you can count these if you like, but you just want a little bit more than 10 centimeters, I reckon. 10 to 12 centimeters is great for a swatch. You want to have a nice relaxed bit in the center. And hopefully you start to get into a little rhythm. You can relax your hands if they're feeling all tight and pick your yarn up again. Bring that to the front. So I generally have between there, grab onto both. Let's actually go for about 20, we'll go for 30 stitches. See how we go. So I've already got 10 or so here. So 2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 14, 15. Sometimes the yarn gets a wee bit twisted, but just because you're going in the same direction all the time. And you want to try and get an even amount, so tighten them up evenly. If you've got a big blobby one like that at the end, that's just because that one I haven't pulled it up snug. So it gets lovely and methodical. Well, hopefully. That's the goal. You might be turning it inside out by now. I'll just have a count up and see how many I've got. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Let's go for 29 and 30. Okie dokie. So I've got a fair amount out the back. I don't need any more of that now. I can just trim that off so it's not getting in my road, and I'll just get rid of that large bit of yarn. Okay, so now have a wee check of your long tail cast on. If you've made it with me, amazing. If you haven't, please don't stress. I've had a hell of a lot of practice, so try not to judge yourself against me. but we're going to turn now and work back along this way. So you generally always have all your stitches on the left hand needle, and your right hand needle will be empty to start with, and you're working them from your left onto your right. So now what we're going to do is a knit stitch. And for a knit stitch, everything happens. You're going to wrap the yarn out the back. It's very well used. So you've got knits and purls generally. You're going to insert your right hand needle from the front to the back. So we're just going to use this front little leg. There's a little leg at the back as well, but we're not going to worry about that one. So this is called the front loop. This is called the back loop. So we're going to pop our needle in from the front to the back, just like that. And then we're going to get our yarn, our working yarn, and wrap it around the needle. And it really helps to have tension somehow on your needle. You'll find that in time you just pick it up. I'm going to show you how I hold the yarn. If it feels really odd for you, it just means that maybe you need to hold your yarn differently. But I tend to have it wrapped around my pinky, and then I have it wrapped around my pointer finger. So those two there let me hold a lot of a perfect amount of tension, and I generally, this stays quite steady and my yarn just flows. So I've got my yarn wrapped around that right hand needle, and I'm going to pull the stitch through and then slip it off. So it's really good to have these stitches on your left needle quite close to the tip, the end of the tip. Too far back and you're really fighting to slip them off the needle. So we'll do another knit. We're going to do a whole row of knits. We're going to do a few rows of knits actually. So I'm going to pop my needle in from the front to the back. I'm going to wrap my yarn around the back, and I'm going to pull it through the stitch and then slip the stitch off. Same again. So needle in from the front to the back, wrap the yarn round and pull it through and slip it off. And every now and then you'll just let go of your left hand and bring a few more stitches up. If they're nice and snug together here, you'll find that they help push that stitch you've just worked off. And then you can use this finger just to hold these ones back from falling off. So if you continuously knit in rows, what you'll get is stocking stitch. And that is where it is exactly the same front and back. So we've, did I say stocking? I meant garter. I can't remember if I said garter or stocking, but knitting all the time when you're working in rows is you'll get garter stitch. So it looks the same on the front and the back. So we're going to do garter stitch for, let's do about 6 rows. So this is row number 1, and I find it's really handy when you're first learning to have a little notebook beside you, and either draw 6 circles in a row and tick each one off as you've doing them, or fill them in. I might need to do that because I'm busy yarning and forgetting where I go. You can get cute little row counters. You can get apps that help you count. So I've got 2 more stitches to go here. And it's really important, just so that they don't fall off, you hold them back from not slipping off the end. Last one to go. I'm going to wrap, pull through and slip off. So we have got a cast on and one row of stocking stitch. I'm just going to grab a pen and mark my row so I don't forget. So sometimes you can do just a simple set of circles like that. And this, we can put K for all knit. So we've just done number 1. So you can either colour it in or give it a wee tick. I'm just going to sit that out behind the screen so it's not in our road. So now we're going to turn, and this now becomes our left needle, and we're going to knit onto our new right needle. So we'll do the same again. So I'm just going to knit in the background. You can stick here and watch me if you like. Sometimes when you've got a little end ball, it can be a bit hazardous rolling all over the place. My interchangeable cord is trying to hold hands with my tripod leg. I am what you would call a thrower. I let go of this right needle and throw this around. There's quite a lot of different techniques. You'll find that you'll generally be similar to me if I'm teaching you how to knit, or you might come up with your own new method. And my left hand does quite a bit of work getting this needle through and off. There's so many ways of knitting. This is called traditional English style. There's continental knitting, which is another version itself. There's loads. So last 3 of this row. It's nice just to slow down at the end of the row just so that they don't have a chance to slip off. Just hold good control. And that's our second row. So it starts to get established quite quickly. I'm just going to colour that second circle in on my book. And now we're going to turn our needles around so we can work from left to right. And I always manage to do that. I've just got that twisted round. Make sure you're ignoring this little tail and always working with the ball, the yarn going back to the ball. So if you wanted me to help you with the way I pick up my knitting, I turn it around my pinky and then I turn it around my pointer finger. So this is row number 3. And we're not really working to a pattern here. I will give you the link to the gauge swatch pattern, which is really good. It gives you a definite number of stitches to cast on. And then if you stick around to the end, I've got a little treat for those who are watching till the end. As you use up the yarn, just get some more off your ball so it doesn't change your tension. Last 3 stitches of the row. There we go. And we're going to turn and do the same, but don't forget to mark off that you've knitted row number 3. Okay. Row number 4. So we've been going about 20 minutes by the look of this. And I'd love to know how you're getting on. Love to know if you've knitted before, if you've never knitted before, if you've done it ages ago and need a wee refresher. I am going to be getting on my channel here more frequently just to build your knitting and crochet confidence. I'm on a real vibe of knitting at the moment, so I'll be doing lots of knitting. I'll just go where it's feeling creative for me. Last stitch of this row. It's looking good. So that was row number 4. And you can start to see now we have got bumps on either side. So garter stitch is great when you want a lovely relaxed knit that looks the same either side. But it doesn't have that same knit look. So this is garter stitch on either side of Ida, and this middle panel is stocking stitch. And that's where our purls come into play, which we'll do in a minute. We'll do 2 more rows of just plain knitting. And the Ida pattern is amazing for beginner knitters. You'll get, I'm pretty sure you can get 2 Idas out of one 50-gram ball, like about 100 meters. So each headband will take you about 50 meters. The sample I've got there is in Ida Headband yarn, which I think is all the season's yarns all sold out. Loads of you will know Philippa Cameron from What's for Smoko. That's Ida Headband station. She runs with her husband and family. Just having a wee sip of my cup of tea. Last stitch of row 5. Nope. Now we'll turn and we're on row 6. I'll just colour that in the background here. So this is the last of our wee knit rows. So I'm 100% making this pattern up as I go. In the effort to make a knit swatch, a gauge swatch, so we can measure our gauge against a pattern. And that just helps us ensure we've got the same gauge as what the designer has called for. And if you don't, there's quite a few steps you can do to change your gauge. You could either change your needles. There's a bit more learning involved, which I'll go over in another video on what you need to do, whether you go up or down. It's quite mind-bending maths. But you could change your gauge, change your needle, sorry, you could change your yarn. This is the last stitch of row 6. So it's looking delicious. Now's a good time to sit back and admire what you've done already so far. So now what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate some purl stitches. So I'll just turn my work. So garter stitch is lovely and relaxed. It doesn't curl up at all. Stocking stitch, which is the section in the middle, it does have a habit of curling up. So most, it's a really good idea to do your gauge swatch with a border or a frame of garter stitch. It really relaxes all the edges and it stops it from curling up on you. So we're going to let's do 4 knit stitches at the front, at the start and the end of each row, and then we'll do some purls, and as we go you'll start to see it form up. So I'm going to do 4 knit stitches, so front to back just like we have been. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to show a handy wee tip and popping a stitch marker on. These are some little Knit Pro stitch markers that's going to help us at the end of the next row. Now let's have a go at a purl. So the purl is like the inside out version of a knit. So instead of having our yarn out the back like this, we're going to bring it between the needles and have it to the front. And instead of going from the front to the back like we did for a knit, we're going to come from the back to the front. And then we're going to wrap our yarn over the top and hold it down the bottom and slip your stitch through, and then slip that stitch that you worked off. So let me hold it properly. I feel all cack-handed. Needle, so yarn is in the front, needle's going to come from the back to the front, wrap, pull the stitch through and slip that stitch off. Same again, slip it through and then slip it off. I used to find purls the trickiest of the 2 stitches. And to be fair, I probably still get a bit better. I feel like my flow is a bit better on the knits. You might be the opposite. You might be the same. So we're just yarns at the front. We're going to insert a right hand needle from the back to the front, wrap, slip through and push it off. So this is a purl stitch, and what this is doing is having the bumps. So the bumps of the garter stitch were going on either side because we were knitting and swapping sides, and we are keeping these bumps to one side now, making a right-sided fabric, you could say. So I'm going to knit the last 4 stitches, so I need to do 3 more purls. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to place another marker. Sometimes in a pattern that would say PM for place marker, and then the next row would say SM for slip marker. So to knit the last 4, I'm going to get ready to knit by putting my yarn to the back, and then I'm just going to knit as usual. So this little stitch marker will just slip out of the way. I love the round ones. They just sort of get pushed around by the yarn and don't change your gauge at all. Okay, so now we have got, it'll get a bit more pronounced on the next row, or a bit more obvious what we're up to, but we've got a little bit of stocking stitch happening here already. So the bumps on either side is garter stitch, and bumps to one side is stocking. So we've got garter stitch here, stocking stitch, garter stitch, and on the wrong side of the fabric, sorry, this is your garter, this is the wrong side of stocking, so that's all the bumps all together, and this is garter again. So let's, on the right side row, which we are on now, so we just did a wrong side, and when you're wanting to track that, what you can do is in your book, You could go something like WS equals, we did knit 4, purl to last 4, and then we did knit 4. And your right side row is going to be all knit. Knit all. So then you could go wrong side, right side, and fill some wee circles in. So we just did the wrong side. Now we're going to move to the right, so we'll continually go this one, right side, wrong side, right side, wrong side, right side. Everybody, I've seen so many ways of marking down what stitches you're on. It's quite cool to see, I reckon, all the different ways. Man, it's 4:09 and the light is fading so fast. Heard on the radio the other day that we're heading towards the shortest day. So, wee trick, if you pick your knitting up and it's sitting a bit like that, please try not to pull that over. See how you'll get a double little leg? You need to have that this way. So we finished knitting. We finished our row with a knit stitch, so our yarn was out the back. So when we're starting this row, you just want to have that nice and snug. One thing I have lots of people say when they are just new at knitting, especially on garter stitch, is they really struggle to get nice, neat edges. Sometimes this can get a bit bobbly on the edge. So the only thing there is time and practice and just keeping this last stitch and then the first stitch nice and snug. You don't want super tight, but you also don't want loose. So I normally put my needle in and give it a wee snug. I kind of do it at the same time as doing this first stitch, so it just comes with practice. You'll find your first few projects, you're like, ugh, the edges are so gross. So we're going to knit 4. So we're on a right side row this time, and all our stitches are going to be knits, but I just want to show you as we get to this marker, we're just going to slip it. And this can be an absolute deal breaker for a whole heap of beginner knitters. They're like, I didn't know what it meant by slip the marker. So we're just going to treat it like a little stitch. We're going to slip it from the left over to the right. Easy as. We're just going to knit straight past it now. I reckon, oh, that must be the tail I cut off. I don't know where that came from. Might have got stuck to my sleeve. I thought I had a break, like the ball was in bits. Last thing we don't want to do is sew in any more ends than necessary. So this is a right side row and we're knitting all the way across. Coming up to that second marker, and we're going to do the same thing again. We're just going to slip that. So we're going to take it from the left over to the right. Ooh. So I've just slipped this needle, this stitch, without knitting it. And I can tell because this yarn is not attached at all to this. So I'm just going to slip it back over. Sometimes it happens quite frequently to me. And then what you want to make sure you have is the right hand little leg is to the front. So it could be round the back. And that's not what you want. My kids are just coming home. I just tapped the window to tell them to shush. They'll be coming in a minute. So yeah, that's a good way know how to fix a boo-boo. The left hand leg is always to the back. Right hand leg is always to the front. So we're just going to knit these last 4. Hey Tim. Hey Tim. Bit wet. Is the rugby game finished or?
No, we just came back to work.
It
was boring.
bit wet. I'm just doing a live on YouTube. They say hi. Also, can you grab me a wee tissue?
Are you?
The tissue box is just there, Coop. Okay, don't forget to mark that row off. So that was a right side row. Now we're back to a wrong side, so we're going to knit 4 stitches. We'll slip that marker, and in between the 2 markers we're going to purl. Cheers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to slip this marker, and then we're going to purl. So to get ready to purl, we're going to bring the yarn from the back to the front through between our needles, and then we're going to use our right hand needle to pick up the next stitch from the back to the front. And you want to keep that stitch nice and snug like you did at the end when you go from knit to purl. That can often be an area where people's tension changes a little bit. And we're going to knit, we're going to purl, so we'll wrap that round and slip it through and off. So we'll purl all the way to the marker. I wish my wee screen would like give me a wee beep warning when I am holding my work up high. So hopefully your work's got a nice bit of stretch between the 2 needles. That's often a good sign of tension, or a sign of good tension. And you'll find the more space you have between like this W, the looser the tension will be. So if you're working all really tight up here, your stitches will be way too tight. And it's quite frequent when you're learning to knit that your tension is tight. It's quite frequent when you're learning to knit that your tension comes and goes. So it'll go loose, tight. If you're way out here and this is bendy, your tension will be a bit loose. So it's quite nice just to get this to have a nice wee bounce on it, while also being allowed to flow or to move through your hands. It honestly just takes time. It's kind of like, you know how your grandma could just bake bickies and she didn't even need to look up the recipe. She just gave it plenty of time. So now we're at our second marker, and you can either get your yarn ready to knit and then slip the marker. You could slip the marker and then get ready to knit. See how that little marker just slips around out of the way. So now we're going to knit the last 4. And we'll turn our work, and we can start to see that stocking stitch really get more obvious as we've done a few more rows. So I'm going to mark that off now. I've just done a wrong side with my pearls on. Now I'm going to knit. Just going to grab a wee tissue. So hopefully it doesn't feel like you got too many fingers and thumbs. Might feel like you got 2 left hands to start with, but that is very normal. Now I'm on a plain knit row. Should have had a sip of coffee. You know you're starting to get confident when you can drop the yarn, pick up your coffee, have a sip, put it back down and pick your yarn up. You'll be like, hey, I've just unlocked a new level. And you start to get more to hold on to too, which feels quite nice. So generally for a gauge swatch, I would do a nice square and have a stocking stitch area that I could measure at least about 5 centimeters, if not 10. And that just gives you a nice little flat zone to measure from. It's really good to measure across and up and down, so horizontal and vertical. So that gives you your stitch gauge across does. And that tells you how big or small your stitches are. The more stitches you have in 5 or 10 centimeters, let's say 10 centimeters, the smaller your stitches are. So the smaller your gauge is. So if you had 4-ply yarn, so finer yarn than this, and smaller needles, your stitches will be smaller. So you might have about 28, if you had 4-ply yarn, 3.5 mil needles-ish, you would have about 28 stitches acrosswards. I cannot remember the rows. And with 4 mil needles and 8-ply yarn, generally speaking, you'll get around 20 to 22 or 23-ish stitches to the centimeter. And that's if your gauge is average. I'm going to purl now. So I'm on the wrong side. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. Yeah, and so the bigger and the bulkier the knitting, the bigger the stitches, so that you can't fit as many stitches into a 10 centimeter gap, if that makes sense. So massive stitches with big fat yarn, let's say it's a lovely big mohair or a chunky, you might only have about 10 stitches to 10 centimeters. So I'm going to do another couple of rows, and then we'll have a look at what my stitch gauge is looking like. And then I think we'll be about good. I just slipped that stitch off there without working it. See that? Probably not, because I had my stitches above the screen. So it was over there. I'm just going to chuck it back on the left-hand needle so that I can work it. And honestly, if you can just immerse yourself around people that knit, watch my videos and just watch me knit, it's how you get better. You just got to give it time and practice. Oh. Okay. So I'm going to scooch this work onto the cord. It just sits a lot more relaxed. Excuse the clack of my cord. And then I'm just going to run and grab my tape measure, which I didn't bring up with me. Creaky old floors. So I've got a little retractable tape measure. And then what we're going to do is we'll measure out 10 centimeters. There we go. There's 10. And I'm going to mark it. I might use my 2 little tiny tips, and I'm just going to skewer the work. So to start, somewhere to start. So this is 1 column of stitches. So I'm going to go in between, like hang out above, right between 2 columns of stitches. And then I'm going to measure from there to there. If you've got more knitting, I'm just conscious that we're getting to 50 minutes. If you've got more knitting, it's way easier because it's sitting more relaxed. And I could measure straight across, but we'll just see how we go. 10 centimeters is like exactly to this edge. So I'm going to count the stitches between where I marked here and this stitch marker pretty much. So I've got, you could either count the columns, so 1, 2, 3, 4, or these are still on my needle so I can count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So with these needles and this yarn, I currently have a gauge of about 20 stitches to 10 centimeters. And that is all you need to know to do. So you could do fun things like knit this, and we've probably got a 5 centimeter space across here, which we do. So you don't have to knit a gauge swatch and then do your project. You could just knit a little project like this Ida headband. And if you've stayed this long, I'm super stoked. You almost have got the wee treat. But it gives you a chance to at least measure your gauge. And if you know how to do that, it just makes life so much easier. So I've just spun it round because I could see that my columns were upside down. So there's 1. So we know that this section in between here is exactly 5 centimeters. So let's count these knit columns. Helps if you sort of spread them out a wee bit. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's across 5 centimeters. We need to double that to get 10 centimeters. And 10 and 5 means we've got 20 stitches in 10 centimeters. Same as this. So you'll find the more projects you do, the more consistent your gauge gets, and the more you just sort of get a feel for it. So if I was you doing a wee gauge swatch because it was a larger project, unlike Ida, where you can basically just knit it and see what your gauge is once you're done, I would knit about a square and finish with another 6 rows of just plain knitting to give you that nice little relaxed section. And that is how you knit. What do? We cast on, we have knitted, we've purled, and now I'm going to show you how to cast off, which is way less tricky than it seems. We are simply going to knit 2 stitches. So here's 1. So knit 1. I'm going to knit a second one. And then I'm going to use my left hand needle to slip that first one over the second one. So it's good to hold a wee bit of tension and slip that through and off. I'm going to knit another one and use this one to pick up that first stitch and slip it over. So the key for this type of cast off is to not have anything too tight. I can get rid of this little stitch marker once I hit it. I'm going to knit another one and slip that first one over. Just keep going all the way. Hello to all the people watching live. This is so cool. If you've just joined us, I am teaching you the super basics of knitting. We're just onto the cast off now of this little teeny tiny swatch. And if you've missed this, don't worry. YouTube assures me that I can turn this live into a video and post it on my channel, so I'll do that. And if you've stayed all the way to the end, either in the live or in the video on my channel, I'm going to give you a wee treat. and you'll use this wee treat to, in combination with all the skills you've learned today, and it'll be great. So we're just casting off, keeping it loosish, not as loose as possible because it will be a bit loose. But you can see we've got our cast off stitches, which should have a nice little bit of bounce, and we've still got a number of stitches to go. So this would be the most basic cast off. I'm almost running out of light. It's now 4:28 and on a glum old Saturday afternoon in Gore. Middle of May. Could be worse, I suppose. We're screaming towards the shortest day, which always makes me happy. So hopefully this has built your confidence, shown you that knitting maybe isn't too scary. Either you've recently picked it back up again or you've never knitted. I'm hoping that you were sent my channel somehow, somewhere, and you were like, oh my lord, this is exactly what I needed. Kiwi chick, way down the bottom of the South Island, with a little bit of a cold, speaking to you in normal words, and hopefully just showing you how to knit like your nan would. There's my seconds marker. I'm just going to take that off and set it out of the way, and we've got the last 4. Last one. We'll slip this one over, and then we just simply need to snip our yarn. And the last thing we need to do is pull that snipped yarn tail up through the last stitch. There we go. There's a little teeny tiny gauge swatch, and I'm pleased I didn't knit the last few rows like I would if I was to do a proper square, because it's really highlighting how curly stocking stitch is. So your garter stitch is sitting nice and flat. For those of you who've just joined us, I chatted earlier about the beauty of having a little bit of garter stitch, so it doesn't matter what row, what side you're on, you always knit. And it just is a really relaxed little section instead of having these curly little edges. So if you just did stocking stitch, which is this part here, it curls top and bottom, and it kind of curls to the side. You can see there on my Ida that this has got prone to curl, and if it didn't have these garter stitch edges, it would be a right pain in the butt. So thanks for sticking with me. I truly appreciate you popping onto my channel, whether you did it intentionally or the lovely YouTube sent you here. I would love to give you both my Ida headband as my wee treat. So I will chuck that, and you'll have to, I'm not really too sure how to chuck it on my live. I will have it in the main video of my channel, and I will send you the link to my knitting, my gauge swatch pattern as well, which is a wee freebie. But the extra wee treat is the Ida headband, which you would normally have to pay a cute little sum of $7.90 New Zealand dollars for. Oh wow, this is $7.90 in 2025. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know on your socials. Make sure you tag me if you make Ida, and I'd love to cheer you on from the sidelines or give you any support. I'm very active in my Instagram and Facebook, wherever you wish to tag me, hang out. It's way easier to tag people on Instagram, but yeah, love people to send me messages and photos on Facey or Insta, wherever you're at. Yeah, I'm going to finish the rest of my cup of tea. I'll just grab my current project and show you what I've been knitting on. This is what I'll be finishing my cup of coffee and knitting this afternoon. So I am developing a new pattern, which will be an awesome next step if you want to go for it. Great for beginners. It's got a little extra trick of an I-cord edge, which is great for those who hate a garter stitch edge. Real simple. My last video on my channel has how to do the I-cord edge, so I won't go over it in too much detail here. But this scarf is going to be lovely and long, pointed end. I'm going to finish this with, I'm going to cinch it together and do, somebody said the other day about a pom-pom, and I was like, ooh, pom-pom. I was thinking nice big long tassel, but we'll see how we go. So it's going to be nice and long, so you could wear it long or loop it round. All garter stitch. I'm working it on 5mm needles, so these are slightly thicker in diameter than the 4mm. Not sure how easy that is to see. They're slightly bigger, which means your stitches are slightly bigger. So I'll have less stitches in 10 centimeters in my gauge swatch. I totally didn't do a gauge swatch here, couldn't be bothered. Yeah, so it's all garter stitch. And then for the I-cord edge is just, you just change it up on the last 3 stitches of the row to work the I-cord edge. So I'm loving it. I might go chuck some Netflix on, see what I can find, finish my cup of tea, a cup of coffee even, and do a few rows. So thanks for sticking with me. Head to if you watched all the way to the end and you're like, where the hell is the link to the free Ida Headband? Flick me a message, but I will bring this live